What happens when the life everyone admires is the very life you feel trapped inside? Today's episode is about Soraya, who looked successful by every usual measure. She had a senior leadership role, was financially secure and highly respected. She was the daughter who made her parents proud. But underneath all of that was a woman who increasingly felt disconnected from herself and who used the cycle of dieting and overeating to help her tolerate a life she didn't want. Weight cycling is never just about food. For Soraya, it was about the emotional cost of being the person everyone else needed her to be. Hi there, it's Bronwyn. Welcome back to Before Dieting. In this podcast, we go beyond diets and willpower to look at the deeper structures that cause weight regain. Because when weight keeps returning over years, the real question is rarely, what diet should I try next? One of the hardest things I try to explain to women is that diet culture presents weight loss as a simple overeating problem that has a simple dieting solution. Weight regain is anything but simple. It's highly complex, which usually means there's no single cause and no single solution. And I know I'm the bearer of bad news when I say that, but my intention is never to make the situation seem hopeless. Quite the opposite. I work on the principle that knowledge and understanding empowers you. And if you know that simple solutions don't work for a complex problem like weight regain, it might relieve some of the pressure you put on yourself to get dieting right. I also want to say that research-backed diets and food plans absolutely have a place. But that place is after you understand the root cause of the problem you're trying to solve. And another problem with diets is they keep you busy and stop you going any deeper. One of the other problems I'm always up against is that women often resist the idea that their weight story is unique. Many tell me they know what the problem is, they love food. And then they might go on to name chocolate, pizza, or their favourite comfort food as the culprit. Yet that description doesn't fit everyone. There are women who tell me they don't even particularly like food, yet they overeat. And what if you're someone who can leave a packet of biscuits unopened in the pantry for weeks, but if you open it, you can't stop until the packet's empty? And just a quick reminder that what I'm talking about here is cycling weight. I'm not talking about the weight gain that resulted from that holiday, where of all the places you visited, the dessert bar was your favourite. So let's go back to the beginning and revisit what causes weight regain. Well, if you start at the top level, and the obvious explanation is that you're taking in more calories than the body needs, and then the body stores those additional calories as body fat. But when you stay at this level of problem solving, there's only one obvious solution, and that is to eat less and move more. And this is where it gets tricky because in essence, that's always going to be part of the answer. To lose weight, you have to create a deficit by taking in less calories than you use. Yet the solution to start another diet doesn't answer the question or give the reasons why excess calories are being consumed in the first place. Asking a woman why she overeats is not only accusatory and shame-inducing, it's also useless as a diagnostic question. When we ask simplistic questions, we get simplistic answers. And remember, systems are anything but simple. And this brings in another reason why diets can be a problem, and that is that they're usually marketed as simple, easy solutions. They're generic plans that anyone can use. But your eating system is as unique to you as your fingerprint. It's been built up over time from your family history, the food rules you absorbed, your life experiences, and much, much more. So when you apply a generic solution like a diet to a unique system, you may see some short-term results, but eventually the system takes over and the lost weight is regained. Now I want to bring in Soraya's story here and what she knew she had to change in her life instead of just changing what she was eating. I met Soraya through a mutual connection and she was happy to talk to me about what she called her love-hate relationship with diets. Soraya is what I would call a technical dieter. That means she's got considerable knowledge about diets and dieting from having gained, lost and regained weight numerous times over many years. At the time, she was a director in a large government department managing more than 100 staff. She was regularly invited onto committees, asked to speak at conferences, and she's built a high profile in her professional world. We met at her workplace, and as we walked from the lift to her office, I watched how she interacted with people and how they responded to her, and her staff seemed to like, respect, and possibly even love her. When we sat down, behind her desk, the wall was covered in photos of smiling people holding customer service awards. By all accounts and all of these measures around her office, her career looks like a success. But when she speaks, just beneath the surface, there's something that doesn't quite sound right. She tells me that now she's in her 50s, her life has been a series of firsts. She was the first girl in her Lebanese extended family to finish high school. And then she was the first to attend university. And then the big one, she was the first in her family to buy a home. Her parents, like many immigrants, worked multiple jobs and made countless sacrifices to give Soraya and her brother opportunities that they never had. When we talked about this, she said, "My parents are so proud of me and what I've achieved. I can't disappoint them after everything they've done." There was a clue. It turns out that Soraya loved school and found academics easy, but her true passion was music. And when she talks about music, you can see that her whole face lights up. And for a moment, you see the version of her that isn't weighed down with everyone else's expectations. Yet sitting with her in that office, you're looking at a woman who is successful by every usual measure. But beyond the visible surface parts of the work, the strain creeps into her voice and the confidence falls away. What comes out is almost confessional. Instead of someone fully inhabiting a life she chose, there is a woman struggling with a kind of dual life. On one hand, there's one built on duty and other people's requirements, and another that she doesn't seem to be able to have. When I bring the conversation back to weight and eating, Soraya has never been slim. In Lebanese culture, she says, food is love. But even with the episodic weight loss she's had, her weight has been now steadily climbing. When she describes her eating Monday through Friday, it sounds more like starvation than a diet, as she tries to cut calories in corners to end up with a calorie deficit by Friday. She skips breakfast most days, has a can of tuna and crackers for lunch, and a small piece of protein and a salad for dinner. I mean, clearly no one can live on that little week in and week out, so I know there's got to be more to the story. And as we talk further, the rest of the eating story emerges, and not surprisingly, throughout the weekend, she overeats everything. That could be donuts and ice cream and pizza. Soraya says, "It's not like I didn't know what I'm doing. Anyone who eats solidly from Friday night to Sunday night knows they have to cut back during the week." Yet, like most women, she has the explanation back to front. She thinks she must be strict with food during the week to make up for the fact that she overate on the weekend. But she doesn't make the system's connection that the overeating on the weekend is largely catch-up eating, driven by the previous week's calorie restriction. And this is a common mistake women make, confusing cause and effect. We need to rethink on a physiological level what causes overeating. Strict dieting or calorie restriction throws an eating system out of balance, and to restore the balance, overeating is the answer. There's a clear logical thread running through the way that Soraya explains things. In her mind, she overeats on the weekend, so of course she has to diet strictly during the week. In the same way that she tells herself she has a great job and can't possibly disappoint her parents, so of course she has to stay. On the surface, it all sounds reasonable and responsible. But underneath that logic is a huge emotional cost, a life that doesn't feel like hers, and a body carrying the strain of holding it all together. When I caught up with Soraya again, she was no longer weighing herself. She said, "In my heart of hearts, I know my weight isn't a food issue, it's a life one. And dieting is useless until I have the courage to make a life that is for me." So at the time, even though the problem of how to live her life on her own terms isn't fully resolved, she is no longer toggling between overeating and dieting as a way to stay in a job she hates, but one that keeps her parents proud. And while that clarity did not make the decision easier, she said it made it far more honest. Because once real causes become visible, it's much harder to keep thinking the problem is carbs, portion sizes, or not enough willpower. And this is why diagnostics matter. Most women already know plenty about food, but what they don't know is what role food has in helping them navigate their life. And this is where our weight ecosystem diagnostic can help. It doesn't start with meal plans or food rules, but by helping you step back and examine the wider ecosystem that your weight exists within. It takes into account thinking about your health, your body, your emotions, your dining history, and even your relationship with food. Because once the boundaries of the problem expand beyond food alone, entirely new places to look for answers begin to appear. Thanks for listening, and I'll talk with you next week on Before Dining.